Hello, I'm Richard Taylor, and I've been working on the emBRACE project, which is building resilience amongst communities in Europe. One of the methods we've been using is social network analysis. So I'm going to show you now the software I've been using to produce the maps. This is called GEPHI. I'm just loading a map here, the first map, and this is typically what you see when you first open a network file. In this case, it's an iGraph file I've opened here. So you've got these three tabs in GEPHI. This central tab is the data laboratory, which gives you a good look into the data that you loaded. And I'm just trying to find here, oh yes, looking in the edges, I'm trying to find the weight, because you may have noticed when you load the file, GEPHI doesn't support multiple edges. Therefore, one thing that you need to be aware of is that it shows thicker links if there are multiple edges. It doesn't show the multiple edges as separate links, but it just draws thicker links. So here I've set the weight to be 1 of all of these links, just so that the network is a bit more visually attractive, and it has equal thickness of the links when you visualize it. So here I'm running a layout algorithm, the force 2 algorithm, just to get the more attractive layout here. There you go. And so the thing about this layout, it tries to minimize the number of crossing paths, and it tries to put the central links towards the center of the network in order to just show this visually, this idea of core and core nodes and core periphery nodes. I'm just running this clockwise layout algorithm now. Additionally, just to get that, because I want my network to be in a landscape format. Okay, that's better. And over on the right you have these statistical algorithms that you can run to calculate or compute all sorts of measures on the network. Here we've got the degree, the network diameter, which also calculates the centrality of different types. So let's run those and have a look at the reports there. Betweenness centrality is a good one. Here it shows that most of the actors have a low betweenness, and some of them have high, up to 20,000. And the closeness centrality. Okay. I'm now looking at the partition, the nodes. What I want to do here is size these nodes, and this little diamond shaped button allows you to set the size and the weight of the nodes. So I've got my node selected, I've got the size, and here you have these parameters that you can use, a min size and a max size. I'm just going to take the default settings here. I could, if I want, make this. Oh, the spline is good because that allows you to use a non-linear mapping, any mapping you like, in fact, to apply this centrality to the node. But here we see we have a lot of large nodes and few small size nodes here. So I'm just going to change the spline to the a different shape there, which can really show that there are few fewer central nodes. Yes, that's better. And many more peripheral nodes which have a smaller size. Okay. Now the next step, I'm just obviously here I've recorded my screencast previously. I'm now just recording the audio, so there's a bit of a lag between, bit of incompatibility because I can't remember what I did when I was doing the analysis. But I'm trying to talk you through it here. So next thing is the colouring of the nodes. I'm using this attribute called specific location, which shows that there are different villages where these nodes are located in the University of Northumbria data set. And this pie chart shows you, all of those different values for the attribute. And so if you do the colouring by specific location, you can see that there is some correlation, a pattern here, light blue ones in this side of the map, dark blues, and particularly purples over here on this side, and then green ones are sort of more centrally. Actually, some of the larger nodes are green ones. So that's quite interesting that there is some kind of pattern identifiable there. But the other attribute I wanted to use here was the respondent one, because it makes a lot of sense, because this network in fact is constructed with respondents and their contacts. So respondents are the people that we actually talk to in collecting the network data, and the contacts were the ones in red here. So the respondents are in green, the contacts are in red. The red ones, we didn't speak to any of them. So in a way there's two different types of nodes here, so that's why it makes sense using these two colours to colour the network. And so it's already looking quite nice, this network, but I wanted to add the labels next. And here at the bottom in the middle panel is to do with the setting all of these labels and edge thickness and so on. Just the things that you need to tweak the graph to make it visually more appealing. So here, clicking this node labels on the node, and then the slider changes the size of these. And this options button here allows you to select, brings up the settings for the labels, so you can have any of your node attributes as the labels. For example, I can use the descriptor here. It makes quite big labels here, and it's only for some of the nodes, so maybe that's not such a good attribute to use. I'm going to select one of the others. You see there's really a lot. It's quite a rich data set I've got here. Okay, this is the long names for all of the nodes. So I could, if I wanted, put full names on them. Uniform resource. But I also made this short label, which is actually the sector, and this is the one I'm using here because I want to fit my labels inside the nodes, and just to make it neater, the sectors and subsectors where you use a hyphen. So I've got these labels now, they're a bit too big. Oh. And this drop down here tells you whether you want to scale how you scale the size of the labels to either to the node size, so it's similarly scaled as the node size is scaled, which is to the centrality measure. So that's what I've got here. The alternatives there would have fixed sizes for all of the labels. And now we go to the preview stage, which is where you from where you export your final images. And the funny thing here is that the links are in different colors, which they're not in the overview panel. That they're all the same. The links are all a green color, but in the preview panel they're different colors, so I was struggling with that a little bit. So there's just an option here that you can use for the colors. You need to click show labels, and here the labels are too big again, so a bit of more tweaking is needed because it doesn't exactly correspond to what's in the overview panel. So you can make some adjustments to the size of the font in this panel, and also change to a more compressed size of a more compressed font, as well as the font size. So and the edge color is the other factor that mixed colors between the source and the target. Let's make them uniform. I'm just using my mouse wheel here to zoom in and out just to check that I'm happy with it. You can also use this drag feature to pan. And now this button at the bottom allows you to export your files. I'd recommend, PNG format is very convenient for most sorts of outputs. So here I'm saving my first image, which is about halfway through this tutorial now. The rest of the time I looked into some other features of the applying filters to the network. So if you want, you can continue to watch those, but this is the basic first output that I'm producing. And as I said, I wanted it to be in landscape, that's why I'm changing the width here to get the right aspect ratio, a more appropriate aspect ratio for the output. So the second network now I started to work on was using the filter function to look at one of the ego networks of the most central actors. You can apply filters from this list here, and if you want to filter the nodes, then topology is a good menu to choose from. You have many choices here. The ego network. So yeah, I had a little bit of difficulty to find the node that I wanted to make the network of, the ego network, because in fact I'm not that used to the software. How to find I was trying to find the node with the highest centrality score, but I couldn't find the table of centrality scores which would tell me the node. That's why there's a bit of a delay in this. I can colour them by degree centrality also. It can be a bit overwhelming. There's so many. GEPHI has so many different options and menus and things that you can tweak, that it's really really powerful, a powerful software, but it can also be a bit hard to remember or to find easily what you're looking for. So in the end, I think I remembered the name of one of the central actors that I wanted to study, which is this one, CO4. So if you find you see they're linked. So if you're in a data laboratory, you can select that node on the overview, and here it is. So the network view is centered on this node, which is the C4.1. So I found it eventually, and then the filter asked me for the ID of the node, so I found the ID from looking in the data laboratory and then put it in here. So this is the node ID of the node that I want to build the network on, and the depth is the number of levels of neighbors. So depth 2 means all the neighbors, all the contacts of node N3 plus all of the contacts of N3. So it's 2 levels of connections, and then just by using these buttons here, you can export just these just this subset of nodes and the link between those nodes into a new workspace. However, and this is what I'm trying to do here now. You have to press, I think you have to press select. Oh. And then you have to press export filtered graph, which is the central button. And then you see we're now in workspace 2. You can flick between workspaces, this button at the very far extreme right corner. And now for this filtered network, I can look at just the respondents. I can use the respondent attribute to colour the nodes again. I've got the same scheme for sizing the nodes as before. I'm still using the degrees, betweenness centrality, I think it was. And now here you see this, the panning dragging tool seems to have stopped working. I don't know why that would be. It's pretty annoying, but on the whole it's a really great tool, is GEPHI. It's totally free and open source, and I'd really recommend using that for its power. I'm sure if you know, sometimes you need to restart the program to. The other thing that's also I found is that this pie chart on the left is not quite. It seemed to be stuck on the previous, when we used the previous partition for the specific location. It didn't seem to update after that, but a few things like that, a few little bugs. So I found that the network was too big when I had a depth of 2. So here I'm changing the depth to 1. So we've got just the direct neighbours and links between the direct neighbours of CO4. And trying to export that to a new workspace. Oh, here we are. I'm in workspace 0 now, which has got just my just my central node and let's have a look at that. And let's have a look at so there's the respondent network. You can see half of the contacts are other respondents here. So I'm rerunning the Force2 atlas, because when you remove a lot of the nodes, then it means that the layout probably isn't optimized for this subset. The scaling factor is to do with how strong the gravity is in the Force atlas layout. So by tweaking this, you can maybe make them expand a little bit, and that's what I'm trying to do here, and reduce the gravity. It doesn't seem to have much effect, but okay, when you zoom in, it looks kind of reasonable. You can also adjust the nodes by hand, and especially when you've got them on top of each other, that could be nice. But here, I think the dragging tool isn't. selection and dragging tool isn't working properly, so I couldn't manage to adjust it by hand. Anyway, I think I'll move on now to the adding the labels in. Here we are. This is the slider for the labels. Oh, to tick this box. And so here I've got the short labels, or the labels, which is the sector. You can actually have more than one. Here I've got both the sector and, so they're sort of concatenated, the sector and the respondent name, I think it was. So here you've got longer labels for each of the nodes, which I think is fine for a smaller graph like this ego network. It's more reasonable to have longer labels, I think. Remember in the previous graph we just had, and here I'm colouring it by sector. The idea here is to show the range of sectors that the CO4 is connected to. So that's why in this case I'm choosing the sector for the colouring rather than the respondent type for the colouring. So here we are in the preview panel. Here's my almost finished network, where I've oh yeah, I want to show the edges. I think that's fine. I'll take off the proportional size for the labels and make them all, so I'm making them all the same size, I'm making them all a bit bigger, and you have to press refresh every time you make some change here in the preview panel. So that's looking quite good, that network. The only thing is you can't read the labels too well, so there are other options here for changing the opacity of the labels, changing the colour. You can add a box. That doesn't seem to. Adding the box can be useful because it makes the labels stand out a bit more. But here I think you can't see the nodes or the labels very well in this case, so I'll just take that back off. So now I'm ready to export this, I think. This is my ego network, so ego of CO4. Options. This is more of a square sort of figure, so I'll just have the default 1024 pixel by 1024, and then save. And it's worth checking, of course, your outputs just to see that the results are as you would hope. So here's the first network, that looks fine, the big network. Here's some other ones that I made with a different software. So here that's quite good, you can zoom in, the labels are still clear. I'm quite happy with that graph. The EgoNet seems it has cut off some of the labels there, so I would have to go back and modify that. But I don't think I'll bother right now because I think you've got the idea of how to do this. Thank you.